Well, let me start with a prayer first. This is one that you have heard quite recently, but I have grown fond of it. It's the collect for the seventh Sunday after Epiphany. Send your Holy Spirit and pour onto our hearts your greatest gift, which is love, the true bond of peace and of all virtue, which whoever lives and is accounted dead before you. Grant this for the sake of your only Son, Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen. I woke up at 4 this morning. I go to bed quite early sometimes, and went to bed at 8 o'clock last night. Woke up at 4. I looked out and there was no snow. I thought, okay, well, I know what I'm going to do because that's what I worked on yesterday. And then about an hour later, Debbie looked out the window and said, "No." And my first thought was, well, let me tell you a story. About years ago, I was a youth director, and we were going to go on our first youth trip. I had been brought by a man who was the person who helped me get the job. We were in seminary, and he was 2 years ahead of us, and he is now the retired bishop of somewhere in California. I forget where he is. He and I are good friends. Same as Ed Little. And anyway, we went and we got there. We went to a place. We were in Chicago. We lived in Chicago, and we went to a place in Wisconsin. We had about 20 kids, and we were going to stay in this old house for a long time. And we got there. It was all, of course, all teenagers. And so I had worked very hard, and I had actually purchased in Roman Catholic Church a youth program for this one weekend that we were going to do together. And we started up for it, and they all got together in this big room, and I started, and it was terrible. Absolutely terrible. So after 2 hours, 2 very long hours for me, it was time to take a break. And then we're going to come back in a couple of hours, and we're going to start in part 2. We're going to do this for 3 days. And so I just go back in my room by myself and close the door and thought, what am I going to do now? And it was over, it was over Valentine's Day. And so I just stayed for an hour. What am I supposed to do about it? And after a while, 2 kids walked in. The boy to me first. And when he said, he knocked on the door and said, "Kid, let's get this over. So we can do something fun." So I said, okay. And then, as I was walking out, the girl walked in. Her name was Chris Ford. I haven't seen her in And he walked in and said, "Would you like these?" And I thought, "Oh, what the heck?" I guess. And what they were, you know those little Valentine's things that have something on it, like "I love you" or something like that. Yeah, little candy thing. And I thought, huh. So I said, "Give me a minute. You all get in there." And I went around and I took a handful of these things and put them on each bed of the kids. And he came in, and I totally had no idea what to do. I mean, absolutely none, except I put these things on the beds of the kids. And then I came in and he said, "Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do something different." And there was this audible sigh of, "Thank God." Whatever he's going to do, it's not this bad. And so I said, "Here's what we're going to do. Everybody go in and get a handful of these Valentine's candy and bring them back in here." So they all came and they got them off the bed. Came in. Each one had enough to give each one. And I said, "What I want you to do is, I want you to take these and go put these on the bed of who you think what this 'I love you' or 'you're great' or whatever. You can put it on the bed of the kid who you think most fits that person." And then I went away and thought, well, what's gonna happen? And what happened was, for the next 2 years, that utterly changed what we did as a youth group, just on the fly. I say that because I thought about doing that this morning. Because I had a number of things planned, but when I saw the snow and the fact that I had to get out in the snow to shovel it, and then I thought, well, what can I do with it? And I began to do some things a little differently, and we'll see what goes. And I'm very conscious of your time, very conscious of the fact that we're a little behind schedule, and we'll make that happen. But let me start with something from Brian McLaren. It says this on page 2, if you have your book and want to see it. He asked a question. What would it mean for Christians to discover their faith, not as a problematic system of beliefs, but as a just and generous way of life, rooted in contemplation and expressed in compassion, that makes amends for all its mistakes and is dedicated to the beloved community for all? Could Christians migrate from defining their faith as a system of beliefs to expressing it in a loving way of life? And I think that's where we're supposed to end up. I'm not sure how we get there, but I think that's where we're supposed to end up. Let me talk a little bit. So, what I don't want to do for 6 weeks is talk the whole time. Absolutely not. When I do things like this before, I say things like, you come in and want to say something else, or raise your hand, or just interrupt you, and we'll do that. And I still feel that way. I'm assuming you're going to read the book. You can lie if you want, or you can be quiet if you want. I think it's worth reading, so I urge you to read it. And also the study guide that goes with it. which is also helpful. And if you can't read the whole book, you can read it because this has some interesting things in it as well. But what I want, and we'll talk a little bit about this a little bit, I did schedule for today to say probably more than I will at any other time. At least that is my hope and my prayer, that I will not be the talker, that we'll all do this together. I will also warn you, in my heart, every time I speak with a class or something, it is my great goal to make you laugh. I'm very serious about that. I want to laugh. So if you don't laugh, it will ruin my day. And if you do laugh, it will make me happy. And if you make me laugh, that's even better because I get to laugh about that too. So I hope that we will be people who deal with this in a fun and open way. And if we come up with things we never thought of, that's just fine. Felicia might not like that. So is that okay? Christian use is a wonderful way of inviting people to community. Friend of mine, his name is Alan Jones. For many years, he was the dean of Grace Cathedral in San Francisco. A few years ago, when the people who were once part of the Episcopal Church that became part of the Anglican Church in North America, they there was some real conflict. And Alan, who is not a conflictual kind of guy, what he did was say, how can we work together and live together? He tried very hard with that. He failed at that. He tried really badly because that just never worked out. But it was something that was part of what he genuinely believed in. He wrote this book, and it's called Reimagining Christianity. But then he goes beneath it and says, reconnect your spirit without disconnecting your mind. And when I went to Jackson and read this book, and I said, that became the tagline of the church on bulletins and websites and that sort of thing, because that's what we were hoping our church would be able to become. To take learning what God wanted from us to learn, seriously, but also along the way, learn to experience the faith of God within us. And right now, I will just point out that you all are all quiet and talking. So I could glare. Who would like to be the glare? The person who's glaring.
I'm good at that.
It's Larry.
Look.
So, let me ask you a question. And I'd like to start. Somebody start with you. So I'm going to ask everybody. We'll just go around the circle. And if we need to go around a second time, that'll be okay, but we won't go there. Okay. Then they get excited. I got tickled when I heard Larimer County decide, well, we're going to get rid of masks, and we're no longer going to require students to wear masks in school, and they're all going to be fine. And I thought, oh gosh, here we go again. Give it another 3 weeks, and we'll all be back, and then there'll be people will come to
school meetings, and they'll get ugly and argue about it, and then somebody from Douglas will come up, and then they'll get really angry about it, and that sort of thing. But it's been 3 years. Is you like it to become? John, you go first. And everybody, I am gonna stare at everybody. We're gonna go around, and then we'll get anybody else who wants to say something a chance to do that as well. Can you go first?
This church is a group of people that have come together in thick and thin, not only in the, actually it was 2 days ago, yesterday was exactly the second year anniversary of the declaration of COVID in this country, but you were right, it started in November before that. But this is a collection of people that went through COVID, but they went through, we lost our church. We lived down the street on West Elizabeth. We've been dissipated, we've been separated, we've been thrown to the winds, and yet a small group of us are still here. We're still together. We're still looking at the Lord in the same way, and a different way, because we now have 2 partners we didn't have before, and we have our people are still here, and now we're coming out of this COVID, and it was really great to see people back in the congregation and online today. We're going to become even stronger. We're going to become even better. We're going to find ourselves and our Lord more closely, more nearly, and follow Him more dearly as we go on.
What's going on?
I will.
Okay. And then we're going to wrestle with this for this one.
Okay. So when I had to be in the hospital, or when I was told I had to be in the hospital, Honey went with me to see the transplant doctor, and she had a little crush on me. We'll go with that. But so he started talking about, well, you're going to be in the hospital this length of time. And then after that, then, you can go to an apartment here in Denver, and but you'll have to have somebody with you 24/7. And my first thought was, I can't do that. Yeah, I got much time off of work. And I told the doctor, I said, well, I'll just need to stay in the hospital because I don't have people that can stay with me in Denver. And Honey looked up at him and she said, she's wrong, we'll take care of it. And I thought, okay. She set up a schedule of people to come and visit me as soon as the doctor said that I could have people visit me in the hospital. And she set up a schedule of people to come and stay with me. And it's still just, it just makes me tear up, because I did not realize that the people of this church cared enough about me to go out of their way to do that. I mean, that's, traveling from Fort Collins all the way to Denver, spending the night with me in this hotel. It was just fabulous. And that, to me, told me what this congregation is. And even though we may not be huggy, the people who went out of their way to help somebody, and they do it all the time. So that's who we are, and I think if we can just hang on to that, it will be fabulous.
While you were talking about it, I was thinking, now, is the person who got Joel Osteen to come and sit with her? I just wasn't sure. I'll do that. We'll skip over that. You go there.
What was the initial question? What we wanted to do, what is it?
What is this church? Or what would you like it to become?
What's your name? Mary Ann Henry. I came from Wyoming, so I know about small churches.
Yeah.
And I found Episcopalian in Lenten, and I found this church, and my goodness, they really like doing things and having activities, and so I said, I'm going to stick with this church. Even though there's another Episcopal church, I went to it first. And I found it's a very safe home. Thank you.
See St. Paul's as a group that's wanting to collaborate with others. So within this building and outside of the building. So that's where I see us. That's what I value. I feel like I don't want to be in a little vacuum. So, and John used the word, we lost our building. We chose to sell the building. We chose to do that. And that was a strange feeling for, like, to not have, you're so used to that, like having a space, at least not lots of churches don't have their own building, but we did. So then when you don't, and we didn't know where we were going to land. And then we ended up here temporarily, like we could rent space here. And we found out that we would stay. So I decided that. So that's why I'm still here. Yeah, it's more like this ever-changing adventure, and COVID just added to the adventure. What's going to happen next? We can't leave because we can't leave. What's going to happen next? How are we going to handle it?
I'll take your fans off. You can hear me. I'm Holly Carroll. And yeah, this church is my community now. And I think my spirituality and just my sense of being a part of this group has even grown through COVID. Despite all the Zoom meetings that we all get tired of, and I'm so glad to be here in person today. Wednesday. It's I just feel like we have grown, and I have grown as part, and Judy and I we're involved with the Immigration Task Force, and we have been working with the other two congregations, and that has been such a meaningful experience for me, and I feel like contributing to our society and doing something about some of the immigration issues that so many of us in northern Colorado are dealing with. So that has been good, and just the willingness of all these people from the three congregations to get to know one another and to work together. I just think this is what love is all about, that we have grown, and I think we've especially grown these past 2 years despite COVID. And I've gotten to know people better. Thank you. So I'm I'm getting emotional. I'm so glad to be part of it.
I had to talk to Rebecca coming today. She said, I haven't read the book. Don't worry.
Just have your eyes with your mask, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. Thank you.
So what about you?
Yes, my comment is built on his introduction, where he's talking about conversion. I don't buy into that, but it's along that theme. And I think that the thing that's important to me and I see happening here is kind of a rediscovery or reclaiming of the fellowship of our founder. And it's hard to do that because there's so many distant voices down through the centuries of everybody thinking that we have an idea of what the founder was trying to teach. And I think that this congregation is moving along that pathway, that we're working really hard to understand what the founder wants us to do as the community of faith. And to reclaim that, will be a voice that might be a little bit different than other voices we hear around us from other denominations, but to try to understand the principles of the founder and to build our life upon these principles.
So are you the founder of the church or the founder of Jesus? So,
You know how far back we're going to family.
We're going way,
All the way.
he always gets in the way and distracts us. What do you want to say?
Nothing. Was relatively new here and just fell in love immediately, looking at the history and knowing your steadfast faith. And as I read through this, and I went to find my notes, as I was reading chapter 3, learning how to love, and kept reading through it, I thought, well, he's writing about St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Fort Collins. Hey, this is great. We embody everything, in my view, he says here. We just go without exception and nonstop. I honor every one. So that's my church here. Because I'm people I just admire incredibly and love.
Flexibility, not senility.
What about people on Zoom? Would anybody like to take a shot at this?
Let's go and Terry.
He's easiest to speak at all just by punching the sound button.
We weren't hearing you earlier.
Yeah. No.
Can you start again, maybe?
Maybe. Shall I turn it up a little bit?
You're good.
Okay. So as I'm hearing all of you, I'm thinking of that kernel of truth that is sort of what we're all seeking and yearning for in our lives. And I think Bill hit on it, our founder, Jesus Christ, God, love. And I wasn't happy when I saw the word conversion, because we've done that with EFM, and it really means sort of a hard turn. And I don't think that's really what our faith is here at this church. I think it's seeing God and love in each other and in our world from different facets, from different ways, like a prism. And as we change in our lives or experience different things, we see that love, that kernel of God from different angles. And I think this church is one of those places where our ability and our willingness to look at God and imitate that love changes, but changes with the way the light comes in. It comes in different colors. It comes in different tones. But I think that's what this community really is all about, is basically that kernel of love, that center thing, that energy, and that in our work here at St. Paul's, I think we're all enabled and encouraged to look at it and to copy what we're seeing, to be led closer to that kernel, but from different angles. And we appreciate the different angles. And I hope I'm not running on too long, but I hope I've made some sense. But I'm so appreciative of this community, that it's a place where we can look and copy and be part of that love from whatever place we are coming from.
Nicely done. Nicely done.
What comes to my mind, and we've been part of this church for almost 3.5 years. So we got here before the virus, barely. we live in Windsor. We come a little ways. But we were seeking, and my wife, we were seeking fellow seekers. And I say that because, you know, some places you go to worship and they want you to check your brain at the door. And I don't understand that part. I also don't understand where there are dictates. You have to believe this and this and this and this, and that's it. I like to question what we believe and why. The other piece is St. Paul Corinthians about love. And it's non-judgmental. And that's one little piece of what he says in there. But that's an important part.
Thank you.
I think I'm going back a bit, but at the time that we sold the church on West Elizabeth and came here, we were in a period of change. We were in a period of flux. And then COVID hit, and then we had more change and more flux in our lives. But if we look at that as an opportunity rather than as a bad thing, it gave us a chance to look at our values. Who are we at St. Paul? I think we always knew, but I think it gave us a chance to step back and really assess who we are and where we want to go in the future. And I feel that for me, where I want to go is that I want to go to that place of love where Jesus takes us. And that is within the church and it is in our entire community. And that's where I see our church. That's where I think a lot of us are in our assessment and in our values.
Community is also something very important to me. And so without that, sometimes it gets kind of a bit lonely. So thank you for saying that. I know, she was, I knew that. Was that one first?
I really resonate to what Bill and Kathleen just said. One of the things that just seems to be so powerful here is the welcome. It is forming community. It is doing service. It is following with your brain what Jesus really was saying. How we can imitate that and make it happen around us in our lifetime. The other thing that is just part of it, finding ourselves in already in motion when we came here 3 years ago, is that there was this sort of loose partnership that we were communicating with other liturgical churches that can really bind together on many, many things, and particularly for outreach, and particularly for sharing space, and then actually showing other congregations how that can happen to them. As Kathleen said, we're in the midst of change on all sorts of levels. It just overwhelms us that there is so much change in our lives, in our culture, in our politics, in in just how we go to the grocery store. And what COVID has done is people ignore the fact that there are masks. It isn't any big deal to wear a mask. But that's the kind of thing that we are living in. And for our congregation to be able to blend together without losing our own identity, but blend together to follow Jesus and to show other people where there are much more changes than we're facing, that there are ways that other congregations can blend together.
I really liked what McLaren said in the introduction about instead of belief, finding meaning. And the last couple of years have been very challenging for me. Well, for all of us. I mean, that's stupid, but I don't know if I have a future in the church. St. Paul's has been very important to me and spiritual growth. But I can tell you more of what I don't believe than what I do believe. So I did find the beginning of this book rather hopeful. So, St. Paul's has been my home for a long time, and I've been hanging in on Zoom and things the last couple of years. But I don't know what the future of St. Paul's holds for me, or what I hold for it.
We're almost finished and going around, and I want everybody to remember just what Becky said. Just add that.
Apologize for coming in late, but as Lori has pointed out to me more than once, I am a Martha as opposed to a Mary, and so I tend to clean up the dishes before. But I'm very glad I came in at the time I did to hear everyone, because I couldn't agree more. And one thing with Becky, one of the things that I like so much about St. Paul's is we are free to say those things. To say, I don't believe. To say, I do believe. And believe whatever. And to talk about it. And so that's the other thing that's been very hard for me, as it has for many people who are extroverts. This inability to be with people and talk with them has been hard. We've learned. And we can, every step of the way, we can learn. And that we get closer to what Bishop Curry called, I hope we get closer to, or we keep searching. I guess that's a better way, I believe in it, for the way that Jesus taught. And we step on each other's toes. This morning's a good example. We just stepped on each other's toes. And we just say, sorry, we'll do better next time. We'll change something, whatever it is. We keep searching for the way. And I don't know if most of you heard the story that when we came here, someone, before we got here, someone said to us, what's the plan B? Because they're you soldier church. And we said, we don't know. But because we were unprepared for that question. And we said, we don't know, but we do know God is guiding us, and God will bless us by the way, because we are searching.
Yeah, you were next.
Good. I was saying today that one of the temptations some of us face is the temptation to avoid pain at all costs. And I have not experienced this congregation to succumb to that temptation. Maybe there have been times we've wanted to avoid pain, but this congregation has been courageous in many ways, and it has maintained its compassion. Those are the two characteristics that I found when I first came here. Courageous and compassionate people is what I found. What I hope the church will be, and it's a captivating vision that Brian McLaren puts. And one of the things he talks about the church being is a school of love. What if the church could be a school of love, beyond Sunday mornings, but during the week, and what trappings can we let go of? But a school of love and learning in the ways of Jesus. That vision is very captivating to me.
On page 13, and I'll read the sentence to you. It's on page 13, the right-hand side, up close to the top, fourth line down. Without continuing conversion, our traditions grow proud and corrupt, self-seeking and ingrown, rigid and constricted. Without continuing conversion, we can be faithful neither to Christ nor to ourselves and the world around us. The initial name for Christians was not the church, it was the way. Can we have a couple more minutes? Because we started late. If I get you out of here in 10 minutes, will you forgive me? Okay. By the way, next week we're going to look at chapter 2 and chapter 3. So if you'll get started along the way. One of the things Brian McLaren says when he talks about the great spiritual migration is one of the things that we found is we started looking at what's going to happen with now that this COVID thing struck. And one of the things that we found is that it looks like at least 30% of the people who regularly went to church have stopped over COVID. Some is higher than that, but at least 30%. That's the bad news. The good news is, the surprising news is, that has not decreased the income at all. That people are still giving. Now, what does that tell us?
That still the work is important, and I want to support the work. But I don't have to go and recite the Nicene Creed. You can have my money.
I'll tell you this. For another day. Dan knows that story. But anyway, yeah.
Two people in here said they didn't like the concept of conversion. I'm not sure what they meant or how you define conversion. To me, conversion means get modern, move along with society, what we need to do as a congregation to love people, how we behave and how we relate to others in the community. That's conversion to me, because the church is held together, in my view, by tradition as well. It's not, we don't throw out all the tradition. We'd just be a group of people with like-minded love, maybe. And maybe that's what it's supposed to be. But the tradition, to me, is the glue that holds us together. And I don't want to lose that tradition. And that's why we have a place to worship and we have a way to worship. And then beyond that, it's conversion. So I was wondering what people were concerned about conversion. You mentioned it now twice.
Well, I pulled that out because McLaren talks about and asked you to talk about in this book, is to talk about at least three things. One is being open to conversion. Secondly, he talks about and how it's, and I'm not going to read what he says about it. One of the things, it's on page 11 though, if you want to, and that is one of the most important things a vital church can do is get immersed in conversation with each other. It's much better to disagree and talk about it than to just sit on it. And so often what happens in churches, we sit there and wait.
I totally agree.
Totally.
Bring it out.
What bothers me is people who don't even want to talk about it. Because I think mostly they're afraid of questioning what they have established as what their beliefs are. And that to me is troublesome. Someone who's unwilling to do that.
I want to thank all of you for talking today. I was thinking, oh geez, I have all these other papers here and I was hoping I wouldn't have to see them, now I don't. So thank you for that. I was gonna have you move in fours, but we're gonna run out of time, so we're not gonna do that, but I'm gonna tell you what next time I would like us to talk about. And I will tell you what I was gonna do with it, and if you wanna do it, that's even better. I was gonna ask you to get in groups of four. And I am gonna ask you this next week, so this may give you a reason not to come, but I'm gonna ask you to get in groups of four, and I'm gonna ask you to, talking in your group of four, if you were going to strip away two things about this church, what would they be? Or, basically you can answer it any way you want. But I am thinking of this church, but it doesn't make, in some ways you are the Episcopal Church, or as the presiding bishop would say, the Jesus movement. This church is the Jesus movement for this area or these people, and there's another group of people down the street who maybe they're dealing with that themselves too. So, but what would you strip away? And I'm going to see if that group of four can choose two of those things. And then, what would be the two things that, after you've taken all those things away, what would be the two things you'd want to add? I thought about, I was looking at this today, yesterday, and I looked about something. It would be really good, and I am terrible at this, so I can tell you what you should do, and know that I'm telling you right now, I do not have the ability to do it. But I thought, what I really liked, and my son had it, and he's too old now, and I don't know what he gave them all away to somebody, but he had this big tub of Legos. And what I wanted to do was say, I wish you would, of those two things you're going to add, I wish you'd do them in Legos. Or paint, or draw, or tell a story. Or if you're like me, you write it down as 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. But that's what I really like, and bring it with you next time if you would dare. So there were a lot of other things I wanted us to do today. We got started late, and we got involved in doing some things that I thought would be more quick. And the good news is not only was what you said was not as quick, but it was also so much better than I dreamed it would be. So thank you very much for that. It's been a pleasure for me to be with you today, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I look forward to it. We'll see you next week, chapter 2 and chapter 3.
Bring you some Valentine cash.
Thank you, Kelson, if you put it in the.